good part about personal finance. It's not very hard to learn. Like there's not complex math, it's behavioral.
Welcome back to the Wolf Podcast. My name is Gav Blacksburg, aka Wolf Financial, from all your favorite Twitter spaces. Today, I'm joined by one of the fan favorites from FinTwit, we'll call him, Mr. Douglas Boneparth, is joining us at Doug Boneparth on Twitter, the president of Bonafide Wealth, a member of the CNBC Advisor Council, and of course, an author and founder in the world of Web3. He's doing a bunch of stuff. And today we are going to dive a little bit into his background, but also into exactly where and what you should be doing with your money on a monthly basis in order to help yourself retire comfortably in that house you want in Bali, in that yacht you want in the Caribbean, whatever you need. Today is going to teach you how to get it. All right, Doug, now that I've set you up for a very high bar, I'd love to give you a minute to introduce yourself here, talk a little bit about your background, and then we'll dive into the actual order of operations.
Yeah, thanks for the awesome intro. Yachts in Bali. Okay. We'll do our best. So again, great introduction. One of the more unique things about me professionally, hopefully not personally, is I've been a financial advisor and working in wealth management for 18 years now. And I'm 37. So I've been doing this since 19. And, that's largely a function of growing up in the industry and growing up in a financial advisory practice. I've done nothing else in my professional life. This is all I do: write financial plans, deliver financial plans and advice, and do investment management as well. And I focus primarily on a demographic that's 28 to 42 years of age. So I was one of the first advisors to say, hey, let's focus specifically on millennials. It was a very cringy thing to say. You got laughed at for doing that. This is like 8 years ago. But I knew if I really invested in our peers, we would grow together. And it was also a function of what was observed coming out of 2008 and 2009. Kind of very interesting times today to go full 13-year cycle here from where we began to what looks like the end of the cycle and into, the next phase. So it's been a crazy journey, but focusing primarily on, older millennials now, relating to the issues that we face, whether it was student loans and dealing with, graduate level, huge amounts of student loan debt. How do we buy houses, start careers that are, entrepreneurial? How do we settle down, have kids, and get to where we are today, which is in a position to accumulate assets? Don't take for granted how hard it is, to start at zero, enter the workforce at a crazy, unprecedented time. Here we are. And I'm talking then, not now. And so this is very true for Gen Z too, probably. How to navigate that, how to take control of that and really just take advantage so you can succeed and get onto those longer term goals that you have, right? Financial independence, starting businesses, settling down family, so on and so forth.
I love it. Doug, so you've never known anything but personal finance, really. Did you have like a fallback plan at like 20? It was like, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to make my own coffee brand or something.
Yeah. I mean, hindsight now with all the things I love to do with my time. Yeah, I probably would have loved to have opened a cafe and really gotten into local politics and be that connector in town. I did not know that back in, when I was 22. There was a degree in public relations, which has actually served me very well in my career as a financial advisor, very, very much about communications and how to play that card very well, not just from a marketing standpoint, but client communication and getting the points you want across to your clients as, you're talking to them about their money.
You were my age in 2008, right? When everything hit. How did that shape the rest of your career? What was the big takeaways from 2008? And then after this, we could start talking for the average person. They're making money each month. Where should they put it? But I just want to get a little bit more into your background.
It was crazy. I mean, I literally got off, I graduated from college, spent less than a half year working, continuing to work in my family's practice, my father's practice, worked throughout all of college is where the bulk of my experience came from. So I was a full-time student and a full-time associate advisor. Still managed to have a good deal of fun. But they were busy days. The sky didn't fall until a little around a year after graduating, October 2008. I got off the plane at JFK, I always say the day Lehman collapsed. I think it was a week or so after. Things were getting really bad, the minute I showed up in New York City. So I didn't really see, what I now can look back on as, oh my God, until I actually got there. So those first 2 years in New York City working in finance, Those were the things that opened my eyes to, quite frankly, a lot of things. Number one, just how scary these things can be. How fortunate I was to where my worst case scenario was flying back home to South Florida to figure my life out while I was watching people lose their jobs, lose their businesses, lose their lives. I mean, these were very, very dark times. Hopefully we won't see again. But yeah, that was a global credit crisis, a global financial crisis on our hands. Looking back at it, all those moments were all amazing learning lessons. Again, I didn't have the skin in the game of life that I do today. I can only imagine, going through that again or doing that with two young kids and a mortgage and all of these things where your responsibilities are much higher. So I think for young people, or Gen Z just getting started here, navigating it should be, perhaps we've given you a little bit of a roadmap, from 13 years ago. I don't think it should stop people from being risky in their youth and taking, their shots, if not now, then ever. Then when, rather. And I think there's a lot of things you can do to make sure that you don't find yourself digging a financial hole instead of, moving yourself forward, right? I think it's much more accommodative in terms of, the gig economy was always around. This is not a new novel thing 13 years ago. Like, people were side hustling forever, but, that's become more commonplace. I read an article that said the millennials that really made out the best from '08 and '09 were the ones who said, enough of this shit, I'm going to go start my own thing, and built their own businesses. Now here they are 10, 13 years later, quiet quitting doesn't apply to them. Sure, the economy and, macroeconomics do, but, they've had this time to have something that's their own, can call the shots, balance their lives. The whole notion of, how do I go back to the office and also get childcare post COVID? That's a huge component to, what the older millennials are thinking right now. So if I was, 22, 23, it's going to be very much fundamental stuff and knowing just how important it is to get that right. How important it is to set yourself up for success, the good money habits, controlling spending, building the cash reserve. And if you can get that done, look at the opportunities that are going to present themselves, right? I would have killed had I had money in 2009 and 10, would have loved to have bought, City at $1. Sirius Satellite was like pennies. You just bought the S&P or NASDAQ and pretty much crushed it from then till now, even with this correction. And you don't get to do any of that unless you're really approaching, your adult life and your finances in an adult way. And unfortunately, that's not a knock on being young. It's like most people just don't even have that at any age. So this is a really amazing opportunity to take advantage of how young you are to get set up. So that compounding you're about to do over the next 10, 20, 30, maybe 40 years, you're taking full advantage of that, because life's going to catch up, right? You're going to, regardless of what, recession we're in or how bad things get, most people are gravitating towards finding someone to be with and love and start a family or build stuff together. That's just why we do this stuff. That's why we live. And you can do that a lot more easily, and you have more choices and options and flexibility when you approach that on stable footing, especially in unstable times.
Should most people have a financial advisor?
I mean, biased for me to say, of course, people should be working with someone. The truth is, you can learn a lot of this on your own. The good part about personal finance, it's not very hard to learn. Like, there's not complex math. It's behavioral. The hard part is the learning piece that's very hard is training yourself to behave a certain way when certain things happen, right? Tuning out the noise, getting those regular contributions into savings or investment, right? Not letting lifestyle creep get the best of you and your ability, to put off gratification of today for a gratification later on. Figuring out how to balance those two things, right? This isn't fire movement at my firm. We're not trying to squeeze every little last drop of toothpaste out of the tube, but we are trying to be smart with our money, but more or less balance, how smart we are with our money with the things that we want to do today versus what we need to get done tomorrow.
Perfect. So let's talk about pecking order. Now, this could apply to, the average millennial or Gen Z that is graduating college and has $60,000 salary, or it could apply to somebody that's in their 40s, right? And is just bringing in daily income and really hasn't started building that nest egg yet, right? It could be anyone on that span. So let's say somebody has nothing really set up yet. Maybe they're trading a few stocks in Robinhood, right? They haven't really done too much in the world of 401k or Roth IRA or all these pieces. And they're bringing in, let's say, $5K a month, just for a nice, kind of round number. How should that get broken down on a monthly basis in
Hmm.
order to allow them to live, right? Because like you
Hmm.
said, that's the whole point of doing all this, but
Hmm.
also to set themselves up for success down the line.
Yeah. The first thing is cut yourself some slack here. You're going into experimental mode, especially for the folks who are just starting out. They haven't had too many cracks at, 12-month periods, 24, 36. You just haven't had a lot of time in the game to really get used to cash flow. So what comes in, what comes out, confidence in earning, what maybe incentive comp looks like if you're getting more than just, your base salary. These are all variables that, could move you left and right when you think about your money. So first cut yourself some slack. Know that you're going into this with learn, the goal is to learn. So once you get that concept down, we do want to focus on cash flow. I think, the thing you should spend a lot of time on here is getting to know your numbers and how money comes in and out of your life. It's very easy, start with what you make, and what's certain. That's that base salary. You gave us $60,000 here. I would like to know how much of that do we need to live comfortably? Danger here, right? Comfort to you, me, and someone else, and where you've been from and how you grew up is a very subjective thing here. I want you to take a very practical approach to that, right? What's if you're renting, what's moderate, to moderately conservative rent, right? What do you need to buy for groceries? Start teasing out these numbers because ultimately you want to find out what you need every month to make your life work, right? And you need to balance that against, well, how much then can you consistently save and invest, right? So take your 5,000, let's use that. We're going to take 20% off for taxes. That gives us $4,000 left, right? Let's say rent and everything you need is 3,000. You got 1,000 left. I don't know where we're living or where I don't know where this is, but in this very back of the envelope scenario, you got $1,000 left. Okay, I can make it all work on $3,000 and pay the tax man. So now what are you going to do with that $1,000? Before you figure out how to chop that up, I want to know, can you do that consistently? Can you get through 3, 6, 9 months of saving that 1,000? What if you find out it's $1,250, right? Or what if you find out you're just reaching into your savings, right, to go get $500 to pay your bill? Well, you're saving 1,000 a month only to use 500. You got it wrong by 500. Okay, make the adjustment 3, 6 months later after living that experiment. That's why I started with cut yourself some slack. You're going to have to figure this out and get consistent at it. This is hard. This is hard because it's the behavioral part again, right? You got to train yourself to do this. If you're not good at this or you've never done it, no one sits down at a piano and starts busting out Mozart, unless you're a prodigy. And most of us don't have, that capability. So you're not going to do that here as well for the most part. So once you got cash flow in order, I call this being a master of cash flow, and you're consistent with money in, money out. Now you got that $1,000. Where should it go? Where should it go? I'm a big fan of first building that cash reserve. I probably have a hotter take that flies in the face of compounding. You hear your mom or your grandparent or someone be like, oh, you should be putting some money in your retirement plan, or you should be putting that money away and investing it. The sooner you do, the more time you have to compound. I totally get it. When you got time on your side, compounding is your friend. But we invest and put risk on our money so that we can stay invested and continue to see out whatever strategy we put into place. For most young people, it's buy and hold. Stick with buying the S&P 500 or the NASDAQ or whatever your aggressive portfolio is. We're not talking picking stocks here. We're not there. There's time and a place for that. We're just talking about, being consistent with this kind of behavior. But listen, before we do any of that, I want to build that cash reserve so we have the confidence and the comfort of being able to stick to that investment strategy, whatever it is. So rule of thumb, 3 to 6 months of your living expenses in cash, right? We just did that in cash flow. Now these two are playing right into one another. We know what we need each month to be comfortable. It was 3,000. We're feeling good. We're young. We don't, worst case scenario, we got to move home. Maybe 3 months, is where you're at. You need $9,000 in cash before I would say, look, let's start investing. Or you could say, look, and that would take 9 months, right? You say, if I was just focusing on that one goal of raising cash before putting any money in my 401k, IRAs, or in a brokerage account, 9 months, $1,000 a month is going to get me to my 3-month, cash reserve. Double it if you're going for 6. You can split this, right? You can say, look, I'd rather get to $9,000 in cash over 18 months, right? And maybe a bonus will hit and shorten that and get money into my 401k. We'll talk about that and talk about the priority. You get to choose here. Some people are going to say, I want to feel really secure and comfortable and safe knowing I can cover 3 months of expenses or 6 months of expenses before I even want to think about the markets or investments. And the irony here is when you do that, the goal is not to think about it after you make the investment. It's to let it do its thing. But if you're just not there and you're building these things up for the first time, it's okay to go step by step. And it's okay to focus on this cash goal here too. By the way, you're only going to accumulate more cash if you say, I want to buy a home as my first goal in the next 4 years as well. But let's put that off to the side. So I'm a fan of saying, hey, maybe let's get ourselves situated and this foundation built out before we start investing, because I think it makes for a better investor. You can choose if you want to split that up. Now, once we do get that cash reserve set up, right, then we can think about, all right, what's our next goal? If it's not a short-term goal, like buying, I define that as 4 years or less. If it's 4 years or less away, I'm generally risk off. Okay, I generally don't want to, risk losing that principal when I need to go execute on that goal, right? Nothing like losing 20% of your home savings goal 4 months before you need to close because you did what Warren Buffett told you to do and go in the S&P 500, right? This year would be a good example of that. Like you did well saving the last 2 years only to watch, all those gains just evaporate. You're now not getting the window treatments you wanted. All right, I get it. So shy of addressing, so after you've mastered cash flow, getting your cash reserve, right? We can start to focus on putting risk on our money now. So here's the pecking order, right? Cash reserve, right? Now we're going to talk about those retirement accounts. All right, so this is where we want to now grow our money in the most tax advantage way possible. So if we have access to an employer retirement plan, most people have a 401k or a 403b if you're at a not-for-profit, or 457 if it's government. Whatever your retirement plan is, you have a pretty good amount of money you can put into these things. This year it's $20,500 as the employee contribution, what you can defer or take out of your paycheck and put in there. Beyond that, so that's a lot. So on the that's probably not going to get filled up on our example, right? Of that $1,000 a month, we're first filling up cash, and then we have another 1,000. Hopefully, income is going up over this period of time too, and that's okay. So we're going to start to work on that. We also might get a matching contribution. So guys, like I'm talking to everyone here. The one exception I usually grant here is for that matching 401k contribution, right? The quote unquote free money. If you got to put 3% in to get 3% match, like go for it. But as far as, putting in that full $1,000 ahead of accumulating your cash reserve, typically, hey, let's make sure we got the order correct for you here. So we got $20,500 that can go into your 401k. Next year, it's $22,500. That's 2023. So good amount of capacity right then and there. Typically, you can choose that on a pre-tax basis. So money that will go in, not taxed in the year you're putting it in. It'll come out taxable later on. Or you can put it in as Roth dollars. So you're going to pay tax on the money you're putting in. But when you take out all that growth and what you put in, no tax at all. Young people like the Roth. The answer is really having a mix of all things. So you can play, the tax distribution game later on down the road. It's not what we need to be going further into here for the scope of this chat. And then after that, there's Roth conversions. So if, this is a strategy that allows more money to go into retirement plans that ordinarily wouldn't be able to go in there. It's just taking advantage of loopholes in the tax code. It's a traditional IRA contribution that's not deductible, but the loophole is you can convert those after-tax dollars into Roth dollars. And there's some rules and some things you have to pay attention to before you do that. But it basically brings us from, if it's this year, $20,500 up to $26,500. All right, that's a lot of dough to be putting in just retirement accounts. But the next step after that, if you can make that happen every year and then move into contributions or systematic investment in what we call just a brokerage account, or what we call this non-qualified money, non-tax qualified, we'll just call it a taxable account. If you can get that $200 a month, $300 a month, $1,000, whatever it is, and do that regularly, look what we got. Your paychecks are coming out regularly into your 401k. Once a year, you're going to do those Roth conversions. And every month now you have, 500, 1,000, however much money it is going into your taxable account. Do that. Do that year in, year out, and build up that asset base. What do we got? We got you in control of your cash flow. We got 3, 6, 9, maybe 12 months of living expenses and cash reserve feeling nice and safe. A chunk of that going into those I bonds, right? Jokes, haha.
We haven't even touched on I bonds yet.
Yeah, I know. We're not going to even get there. We got our cash reserve. We mastered cash flow, cash reserve, maxing out 401k, doing Roth conversions and getting a certain sum into the market every single month. Anyone who can do this or gets to this level, I mean, that's like platinum star status. That makes my heart feel so good as a financial planner because it shows that you've made it to this point of asset accumulation. More importantly, it's put you in a position to have control over your financial life because your real life is going to say, what's the expression? Man plans, God laughs, right? Like, you're going to have a kid. Congrats. You got laid off. You got promoted. You received an inheritance. You've been disinherited. These are things that are outside of your control that are going to happen to you. And when you have a plan or you at least have these pieces in place, making changes, you're more nimble, right? You can make a change easier. Things aren't catching you by surprise. Right? There's no knee-jerk reaction to throwing cash at something that needs your attention, or the opportunity is finally staring you in the face to go buy a dip or a depreciated asset or an experience that you want to have with someone you love or like. You don't need to think about what that is. It's all there for you. You know how to think about that. And I think being in that position is what, personal finance is really all about. I think control is the word to use here. Who's in control? Who's not in control? Who put in the work and created the discipline and behaviors to remain in control, because things do get wild. And right now is a good time to show you just how crazy things can get or will get.
So just to recap, started with 5K, 1,000 of that went to taxes, 3,000 of that went to expenses. And then the
Left
other
us with
1,000 now is used over time or quick, depending on that person's preference, to build up your cash reserves. Then you're going into your 401k. How do you decide between the 401k and the Roth IRA at that point? You're typically funding the 401k first?
Yeah, if the 401k has the ability to contribute Roth dollars, you're prioritizing the 401k because it has a higher threshold to how much money can go in there. If you started $6,000 in your Roth instead of your 401k, 6.5 dozen the other there. But start with the bigger bucket. Fill up the 401k. It has more time constraints on it in terms of IRS rules and things like that. But you wouldn't be choosing between the two. Start with your retirement plan at work, then get into Roth conversions if you can afford that as well.
Okay. So now once all of those have been hit, let's say, and it wouldn't be happening in our example, but let's say someone had more money perhaps, or they got that raise. Where's money going towards after these have been filled? Because of course these do have limits.
Right. So once we hit all those limits and we find out that we still have free cash every month, all right, so what we call free cash is the ability to continue to invest from our cash flow, or you receive a bonus or some incentive, right? So you get a commission or your annual bonus. You first look to see, do I need to top off my cash reserve? Nope. Have I already maxed out my retirement plans? Yup. You can either then go about this by making a lump sum investment into that taxable brokerage account. I prefer to average that amount in. So let's say you got a bonus that netted $24,000. I'm going to go invest $2,000 a month for the next 12 months, that lump sum into the portfolio or into a taxable brokerage account.
And you also mentioned beforehand that, you're just going with those indices. You said there's a different time for stock picking. Where is that time?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty subjective. We call these opportunity portfolios, or folks when they want to get involved in alternative investments, whether that's VC or crypto, or you take your pick. The alternative investment umbrella is pretty big these days. We got fractional art, fractional real estate. You can do all of these things. We tend to draw a line in the sand. I don't really want to see more than 10, at most 20% of an individual's investable net worth. So take all the investments that you have, take 10, 20%. That's the threshold. I don't want to have really more than that. So if you had $100,000 of investments, and we're drawing a line in the sand at 10%, I don't really want to see more than $10,000 in, something that's alt, maybe up to 20%, that would be $20,000, right? I don't know if it's worth the while at 100 grand. You get to decide as the investor. It's just really keeping those thresholds in line. But a lot of the stuff that you might be interested in, we call this, the size of the position, right? So you want to go buy 4 of your favorite companies that you want to hold on long term, but we're talking about investable assets of $50,000. All right. Hey, far be it from me to tell you not to go put $2,500 in each of those companies, right? Or $1,250. am wary about that only because if you get into that ahead of the discipline you're trying to build and the consistency, it's going to disrupt that training you're going to do. Right. So it's not so much, hey, how much money do I have in order to break off a piece to those alts? It's how far have I come as an investor to be able to, adequately invest in this space, not have it be something that interrupts, the all the good work that I've done to get to this point. So that's how I generally think about it, because I don't think at the end of the day, clients will still come in and be like, hey, I put, $10,000 in Fundrise. Okay, out of what, $300,000, I'm not going to even make a comment about that. Client says, hey, I know we just started out, but I put $5,000, into, Lex, or Masterworks, fractional art or fractional real estate. I'll be like, all right, was that necessary? We're just getting started on these regular contributions. Like, I wanted to see a good year plus of that before we start. That stuff's it's not going anywhere. Like, this notion that you're missing the greatest opportunity of your life is probably not the case. The greatest opportunity of your life is to build the skills that we're talking about here, so that for the next 10 to 30 years, and basically from the day you die, you have good money skills. You have the ability to navigate your financial life to a pretty high degree. And that's going to be important. And it's going to be a tool that serves you well throughout your entire life.
Americans are pretty scared right now with the current market conditions, though, right? We have insane inflation. We have war going on around the world. We've got problems with gas, electric, oil, political problems. Do you still feel pretty comfortable?
What else is new?
Right. When you look at 10, 20, 30 years down the road, are you still pretty comfortable and confident in the American stock market and environment and ecosystem and everything that's being built?
Yeah, it's pretty bearish and depressing to bet against, all of that. I mean, then don't bother with this, right? If you don't have an optimistic outlook for humanity and our society and people, we're not going to have a very productive conversation, because obviously underpinning a lot of this is the continual growth of a global community, of a domestic, community, that society does get better. It's very easy, especially in today's world of social media and how quickly news travels and the internet, to get bogged down with, the bad news, the headlines. Mercury's in retrograde right now. So, I mean, for whatever that's worth, all of these things, it's hard. It's harder and harder to ignore the noise. And I get that. And it's very easy to slip down those holes. But I choose to remain obviously, bullish long term. And you can go to old timers like Warren and Charlie Munger, who would obviously tell you, these legends, right, to do the same. And they've been right their entire time. Does that mean they're going to be right? Who knows what, the future holds? But yeah, a lot of this is predicated on the continual growth, and these things happen.
For sure. And one of my last questions is, after what you just said, right, this relies upon having an optimistic outlook and everything. I present Exhibit 1, your Twitter timeline. And I would love to hear, with that outlook.
Is it not optimistic?
Because I'm just curious, I feel like most financial advisors probably go to their timeline and it's like, all the good things, right, about the U.S. economy or all this stuff. And you take a very different approach and it works for you. And I'm just curious how you go about kind of walking that line in between.
Yeah, it's a really good question. If you didn't have the context of who I am and my humor or wit or sarcasm or cynicism at times, and
some
didn't
might
have
say
that
genius.
context. Yeah, genius. If you looked at some of those tweets, of course, you're gonna be like, oh my God, like who, this guy's advising people with their money. I mean, the whole point of what I'm doing here is to flip all of that on its head, right? I'm taking the other advisors often, and I by the way, I was very guilty of doing this years ago too. Cringy platitudes. I mean, come on, what real financial advice are you doling out in 280 characters? Anyone who's been a financial planner long enough knows this gets down to the individual level when we work with clients one-on-one. Painting with broad brushes is very hard in personal finance. It's personal. So, it's obviously, for the giggles and the laughs. And out of context, you might be like, whoa. By the way, when people see it out of context and get to the comments, that's when the real fun begins, because most people following me or in the comments know it's humor, and they can't wait for the person who didn't get the joke or doesn't get it. It's part of the package of what I'm doing there. But yeah, I mean, I haven't gotten any pushback from clients from social media, because they know that's not how I feel. We do a really good job communicating with them and working with them. It's a shtick, obviously. And I think that you need comedic relief, right? I think, this stuff is very boring. I'm passionate about it. You hear it in my voice, but I'm also self-aware. Most people aren't like you or I, running Twitter spaces all day to talk about finance, or me running panels at conferences and working with clients to help people be better with their money. People aren't, as passionate about that. I guess it's around a conference they're passionate about it. But, this is boring stuff. It's inherently a grind, following your own cash flow, getting disciplined around saving and investment. With long-term investment, there should be no immediate gratification. It's a big problem what we had the last 2 years. We got to a point where you could pull Scrabble tiles out of a bag and make money within 5 minutes. That is the worst possible mindset to have, when we're thinking about investing long-term. There should almost be no immediate. I would like there to be pain more upfront so you can really appreciate the gains you have. Now, I would love everything to go up all the time. I think everyone would, but that's just not how it works. So, getting some humor into the world, that's where the account really took off in the dark days of 2020 with, the pandemic and everyone losing their minds. There just needed to be a little streak of humor, and something I've always done. I laugh and create jokes to hide the pain. That's usually why people love comedians and comedy, is because it really helps them look at things just a little differently. So if you're seeing my stuff and you're like, wow, that's really depressing or really bearish, it's actually the opposite, and that's why it works.
Perfect. Hey, if somebody listened to this podcast and they're like, I want that guy to be my financial advisor, how do they get in touch with you?
Yeah. I mean, bonafidewealth.com, Twitter, DMs are open. If you hit me up, I'm just going to say, hey, shoot me an email, Douglas@bonafidewealth.com. There's, if you can't get a hold of me, it's you, not me. There's 1,000 ways to do it. Reach out. I love the pitch. I appreciate that a lot. Follow along. So yeah, Twitter's probably the best way.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Doug, this was fantastic. For anybody that's listening, and this is not going to be out for a few weeks, but when it does come out, we do Twitter Spaces together pretty much every Monday at 11 a.m. EST. We talk about stuff like this. We talk about a bunch of other personal finance topics. We bring in guests, sometimes our friend Austin Lieberman and others.
Awesome. That's great.
Yeah, absolutely. Doug, this was fantastic. I've been learning this stuff from you over a recurring basis over the last several months, but I feel like every time I learn a little bit of something new, and it's helpful for me to rehear it because then I can reshare it with others, right? So it just passes it through to my audience.
It's always consistency. If you got to hear the same, P.T. Barnum had it good. You got to hit them up with the same thing over and over and over again. That repetition ultimately turns into behavior, and that's what we're trying to do.
Love it. Anything else you want to share today?
No, everyone hang tight. It gets better. It's good. We've been enjoying good for a long time. Now we got to go lick some wounds. It's okay.
He says as SPY closes at new lows. All right. No, I'm kidding. We'll see what happens. We both have a lot of hope for the stock market. Actually, not kidding. SPY closing at new lows here. We'll see what happens with it. Regardless, if you're young like me, Doug's taught me this is a great opportunity. I'm going to be able to buy this S&P 500 for cheaper.
Yeah, get ready. Get ready. Get ready for some opportunities to come around. Look, if you zoom out, go back, zoom out to 1929. Things look really good.
Zoom out to 1929. When in doubt, zoom out.
We're way off. We're way off what lows are you talking about? We're way off the lows of 29.
I love it. Okay. More to come. We'll be chatting with Doug on a regular basis. Thank you so much.